Okay, we're going to talk about some general basic bass fishing techniques and lures. What you generally will have is you're going to have a topwater, which is generally a summertime and fall type pattern. You're going to have crankbaits, which you can use year-round. There's different baits, different type of crankbaits that you can have. Then you've got and they'll be listed as a hard bait. That'll be a crankbait. You got hard baits. In my book, it would be generally a spinner bait or a buzz bait, and they're good spring, summer, fall, and even in the winter. You just got to really play with all the lures. And then the most common type of lure that everybody uses and everybody has is your soft plastic lures. So, and soft plastic lures can incorporate anything from your giant plastic worms, which is kind of the started the whole deal. You got your big giant worm right there, big bass lure. Bass really like them. You've got all the way down to fishing just a small grub, a little 4-inch grub. Catching smaller bass, you can catch crappie, bluegill with something like that, and you can catch your very large bass. Very common. It's a very good technique for kids where they just like to cast and reel, cast and reel. Use a nice grub. And then you've got your more, you could call it a specified type lure, where pretty soon your baits are getting more to replicate what's in the water. This is a crawdad looking bait, just a whole big main body with a whole bunch of appendages on it, and they'll call that a creature bait. So there's a lot of variations in soft plastic baits. And then you've got your big worms and your lizards and that, where you're rigging on a Texas rig or a Carolina rig and you're fishing them right on the bottom and dragging them. So probably the most versatile bait over everything would be your soft plastic lures, because you can fish everything from top all the way down to the bottom. Now on your just straight topwater baits, on a hard bait, we've got, this is a Lucky Craft Sammy, and what it'll do is you'll cast it out on the water and it floats. You want to be using a monofilament on your line. You want to be using a heavy line, and the reason why the heavy line is because when you're working the bait, you want it to be pushing the bait. You don't want the bait to run over your line and get caught up in your hooks. Use a heavy mono that's really stiff. You'll get a lot of better action with your topwater baits, and they won't be sinking. This little bait works on the surface, and it causes an action when you're working it called walk the dog, where you're constantly moving it and the bait's just doing a zigzag pattern across the water. Other baits like a pop-R or a chugger, you cast them out and you just chug them, and they blurp, and you just bring them back. And they're a good summertime and a fall bait, early morning, late evening. But in certain lakes and certain times of the year, you can use topwater all day long. I've used topwater baits all day long.